In the first 3 videos of this series, we covered the basics of GitHub using VS Code. But if you're a Windows developer, there's a pretty good chance you're actually using Visual Studio for your day-to-day work. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to clone a GitHub repository using Visual Studio 2026. Let's get started. So this is a completely fresh install of Windows 11 Pro with a fresh install of Visual Studio 2026 Enterprise. I haven't even run Visual Studio a single time on this box. Let's open Visual Studio 2026. I press the Windows key on my keyboard and that brings up the Start Box dialog thingy. I'll type Visual Studio in the search box and the Visual Studio icon appears in the list. There's kind of a lot happening on this results window, but the key thing to notice is that this item says App under it, as opposed to most of the other stuff on this page. I'll press Enter to start Visual Studio. It does a little churning and then we get this screen. Since this is the first time I'm using this installation of Visual Studio, it's asking me to log in. It doesn't seem to say it, but this is basically to set up your license. There are a bunch of different ways to do this, and you even have the option to skip this login step. We could just start by logging in using your GitHub credentials, but I'm going to guess that you're probably working getting your Visual Studio license through Microsoft rather than GitHub. Yeah, I know. Microsoft owns GitHub. But there are nuances to how corporate sales work. So bear with me. My guess is that you're going to want to choose Sign In with Microsoft. Click that button and you get the Sign In dialog. This machine is joined to Microsoft Entra, formerly known as Azure Active Directory or AAD. So there are already a couple of Microsoft-related IDs on this machine. I'm going to use this one at the top, which is my Entra ID work account, but you could also use a Microsoft account like alive.com or outlook.com or even a hotmail.com account. There are also the options to log in with something else too. So I'll select the work account and then come down to the bottom of the dialog and click the Continue button. That'll churn for a bit. And ultimately, you end up on this Copilot page. Copilot is awesome, and I use it all the time, but it's out of scope for this video. For now, I'm just going to click the Maybe Later link. Click that link, and in a moment, we'll see Visual Studio pop up. And here we are on our first Visual Studio 2026 screen, the Get Started dialog. On the left side, it's showing me some really old projects that I have on GitHub. To be completely honest, I don't know why it's decided to show these 2 ancient projects, but, well, I'll just pretend those don't exist and just power forward. I'm going to focus on these items on the right side. The first item lets you create a completely new project. That's the Create a New Project button. Then there's the Open a Project or Solution button, which lets you open code that's already on your disk. Next is the Open a Folder button, which tells Visual Studio to look at a folder and its contents. If you want to not open anything, there's this lonely button down here that says Continue Without Code. But for this demo, I'm going to start with this one here that says Clone a Repository. This one lets us pull down code from a version control repository. Click on that Clone a Repository button, and now we're on the Clone a Repository dialog. This flow assumes that the Git repository isn't already on your machine. It assumes that you're cloning from a remote repo. If you know what the URL is for your remote Git repository, you can plug it in right here. Let's assume that you don't have the URL handy. This dialog gives you 2 options for locating the repository to clone. You can either pull it from Azure DevOps or from GitHub, and since this is a GitHub demo, I'm going to click the GitHub button. The Open from GitHub dialog pops open, and since we've never signed in to GitHub from this machine before, this Sign In dropdown is empty. Click on that dropdown, and under here is the option to add a new GitHub account. Click on that Add GitHub Account item, and then go through the process of getting a browser opened up. Ultimately, you should see a sign-in screen that looks something like this. There's no shortage of ways to auth to GitHub, but I'm going to go with my plain old regular GitHub account. Click the Sign In button, and now we're on the Authorize Visual Studio page. At this point, I'm logged into GitHub using the browser, but not logged in with Visual Studio. To keep going and connect Visual Studio up, we'll click this Continue button. That'll give you an alert saying that this site is trying to open Visual Studio. There's an option to automatically allow this app action in the future. I'll check that checkbox. And then there's the Open button that we'll need to click. Click that Open button, and you'll get dropped back to the Open from GitHub dialog. Now that I'm logged in, it shows me the list of repositories that I have access to. The one I want for this Hello World demo is right here at the top. When I click on that repository, it populates the local path value. The value it's suggesting isn't where I typically keep my code, so let's change this value. I typically keep my source code in a directory called code. My samples for this GitHub video series are in a folder called GitHub-demo. and at the end is the directory for this repository, hello-world. The last thing to do here is to click the clone button. That'll churn for a little bit, and then ultimately drop us into a Visual Studio 2026 window. This is the first time using this installation of Visual Studio, so I'll just rearrange things a little bit, and now we can continue on with the demo. There are some things on this screen indicating that we're working in the context of Hello World, one on the top and another down here in the status bar. But where's our actual code? Well, right now we're on a Copilot chat dialog, but there are also tabs for Git Changes and Solution Explorer. To start working with your code, you're going to want the Solution Explorer tab. The Solution Explorer window is your primary way of navigating around your code in Visual Studio. Right now, Solution Explorer is in a mode called Folder View. Folder View shows, surprise, the contents of a folder. In this case, it's the Hello World repository folder. If you want to see the folder directly, move your mouse up to this root node in Solution Explorer. If you right-click this node, it'll pop up a context menu, and one of the context menu options is Open in File Explorer. Clicking on this pops up a new instance of Explorer EXE for your folder. This is the root of your Git repository on disk. One of the things I'll typically do on Windows is to come up to this View dropdown and turn on Hidden Items. Right now, hidden items are, well, hidden. Now that I've changed that setting to show me hidden items, I can now see the .git folder. That .git folder indicates that this folder structure is a Git repository, and if you drill into that folder, you'll see the inner workings of Git. Just a little bit of handy configuration and hopefully interesting trivia. Back in Visual Studio, like I'd mentioned previously, the Solution Explorer window is in Folder View mode. That's kind of a bare bones mode. To start making use of the power of Visual Studio, we'll need to open a solution. In this case, our solution is bendehelloworld.sln. Just to be clear, while we can see this solution file here, it's not open yet. I have the option to right-click the solution file here, and there's an option that says Open. Choosing that will probably work, but let me show you a different way. What we're going to do is to change Solution Explorer's mode. You do that using this button up here. It's a little bit hard to read the tooltip, but it says Switch between Solutions and Available Views. Clicking on that changes the view into what I think of as Solution mode. It's showing us the list of solution files, star.sln files, for our repository folder. This view is super handy for those cases where you're picking up someone else's code and you're not exactly sure where to start. It shows you all the solutions, and that usually points the way towards getting productive. To open this solution, I'm going to click the file and then right-click to bring up the context menu. That gives me one nice clear option, Open. Click on that option and it opens the solution. Right now, our solution consists of one project, Bende Hello World. It's a console app project, and it's only got one C# file in it called program.cs. Double-click to open up that file, and, well, there's not much here. But it's here. We've connected to GitHub, found our repository, cloned it down to our machine, and gotten the solution open in Visual Studio. At this point, we're ready to start coding. In the next video, I'll show you how to make some changes to the code and push those changes back up to GitHub. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.